Hello and welcome to the Xenothesis podcast. In this episode 41, we're covering chapters 20, 21, and 22 from Part 2 Phoenix of Book 2 Adulthood-Rites of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia Butler. My name is Richard Acton, and I'm joined as always by my co-host,
Michael Glinka. Hi everyone. How are you doing, Richard?
Pretty good, Michael. Yeah, we were just chatting in the in the sort of pre-show here, and we decided to do a little kind of content corner segment in the way we chatted about Violet Evergarden a little while back before we get into the main body of the episode. So, Michael, you hinted you had something you wanted to share before.
So I recently found out there's this a genus of a frog called Mini, and the scientists found 3 frogs, in fact, from that same genus and 3 different species, and they called them as following: miniature, mini skill, and mini mum. The paper is from 2019 that they were describing those species, but I swear, if it isn't the laziest and the most on point naming, it's just mwah.
It's like Drosophila geneticists all over again.
Basically, honestly. Like, I don't know how many other words that stands with mini are there in the English dictionary, but honestly.
Yeah. So from the people who brought you genes called Sonic Hedgehog.
Yeah, and, honestly. Same level of stuff.
That's always funny.
Yeah, so I was just sitting on this for a whole week because I thought I need to remember to say this on the podcast, because my God, it's just so good. Like, whoever, like, honestly, I need to find the I don't remember the author, the first author. Apologies for that. But
yeah.
It's just, yeah. I honestly thought it was a joke. Because I firstly found it on Reddit, I think, as
it does seem like an onion thing, right?
Yeah, it really does. But like, I genuinely went and they actually gave the references, and I looked for it, and it's genuine. It was based on Wikipedia, and the Wikipedia gives you the references, and you can check the article because it's open access. So it's just
wonderful.
I know, it's just I'm looking forward to other. Like, I genuinely want to see if there's any other species of the same genus of the frog and what they're gonna come up with.
Okay, very nice. Right. So a couple of other things on this point. A brief update on Richard Enters the anime rabbit hole.
Oh yes, go on.
So I watched an interesting anime, a very funny one that I enjoyed rather a lot, called The Saga of Tanya the Evil.
Yeah, I would say, yes, the emphasis on interesting.
Yes, it's a bit of an unusual one, but it's kind of like a weird, perverse, inverse version of Violet Evergarden in some ways.
Yeah, if you imagine, like, basically like the evil version of Violet Evergarden, then yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like if Violet was like an evil person instead of a good person being redeemed in some ways. But yeah. And then there's another thing I watched in that space was actually A Place Further Than the Universe.
Okay.
Which is about a group of girls kind of going to the Antarctic, but it's an interesting one, kind of a bit of a meditation on friendship, loss, personal growth, kind of slice of life, but very very good. Well done. I enjoyed that.
Oh, nice. That's good.
So that's the update on my like anime stuff. Couple of other things that I just wanted to put in here. So on the sci-fi nerd front, I found out that Apple TV is adapting the Isaac Asimov books Foundation.
Okay.
Which is a challenging thing to adapt, but from what I've seen so far, they seem to be doing a pretty good job. Like Apple has a ridiculous budget.
Well, I mean, yes.
Yeah. So at the very least, it's very visually good. There's a similar thing. Their other project that was good and interesting in the sci-fi, well, not kind of alternate history space, was their For All Mankind,
Right.
which is an alternate history of the Apollo program, where the Russians get their first different unfolding as a result. But yeah, again, like excellent production values on that, quite good as well in other aspects.
And I think actually soon-ish, the Dune is coming out, no? On HBO. Or it has already.
I think June's already out, right?
Is
it? It's been in theaters and stuff now, right? I think.
Right, so...
I'm pretty sure.
Something to look forward to. But it's going to be just a movie, right? It's not TV series, just a movie. Am I correct?
Just a movie, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's in 2 parts.
Yeah. So something to really look forward. Hopefully, I need to see if I can watch it, because to be fair, I've read the Dune, the first book, okay, and it's an interesting concept. In a way, I really enjoyed it, because as a kid, I remember my father played RTS Emperor Battle for Dune game. All the time, and I remember him always playing it and always getting stuck on the last mission, because it's the difficulty level spike is just crazy. But like I remember, and I was just like, oh, this is interesting. I like the sort of the design and different characters, and all those just like aliens. And then read the book. The book was the first book was good, right? Although I need to say that the main protagonist is sometimes overpowered. He's just a bit too perfect sometimes. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think Frank Herbert said he kind of Paul is written almost as a parody of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
In some sense, there's an interesting analysis of Dune that, like, if you read it as a young kid and you didn't kind of like think about it in the like political perspective and all the rest of it, there's an interesting analysis of it on the Our Opinions Are Correct podcast. One of the hosts of which is Annalee Newitz, the author of Autonomous, another really interesting science fiction book.
Awesome.
And various other things. But yeah, that's recommend that for a different perspective on the politics of Dune.
So, but that's the thing, like the politics, the whole idea, it's pretty interesting. But I didn't read the rest of the books. Because I know there's several of them. I only sort of read the premise and the plot lines on Wiki, and I need to say, it gets really above and beyond a lot of like it just really changes its concept, right? Like it goes really.
I mean, I think in terms of, I I never really got deeply into the sequels. I think I kind of read I read the first 1 or 2. I don't really remember much about them. I remember them. I don't think them. I think of them as being as narratively interesting.
Yeah.
As the first book, right? That had an excellent kind of structure to it. Like ironically, as a parody of the hero's journey, it had a good hero's journey structure, and the subsequent ones less so. But it's I think you get a clearer perspective of what the author may have been like trying to do with some of the politics, the political stuff becomes more overt in the subsequent books.
Yeah.
Which may also be why they're less good in some ways.
I think that might be
keeping
the case.
It subtle.
Yeah. So yeah, I just thought that this is coming out, and of course the recent hype on Squid Games as well. So. Yes. Only just started watching it. Only you and I just only watched the first episode, so we still have to.
Okay. So there we go. There's I saw an excellent comedy comparison. It was a list of 8 things, and it was like, is this Squid Game or an academic career?
Yeah, actually thinking about it,
link and share it with you.
Yeah, it sounds like it's probably very close to reality.
But perhaps we should
wrap
up this little content corner section and move on to the main body of our podcast for today. should we do your predictions for chapter 20?
Sure. So my prediction was that Akin will spend some time in the salvage side trying to learn more about the humans, obviously, because he realized that he has to become the bridge between the Oankali and the humans, right? So he needs to understand the humans to tell Oankali about them, and then being an Oankali to be able to explain that to humans. So some time passing, I hit that, I guess.
Yep. You were, I think, on the nail with that prediction, actually, because we had effectively a time skip of a year with a kind of very brief point from described from that time frame.
Yeah.
And the emphasis was on Akin learning from humans. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So
good prediction.
Let's start with the chapter then.
Mm-hmm.
So the chapter 20 starts with, basically, as I predicted, Akin staying at the salvage site for over a year. He would spend time in the hills watching the salvaging taking place and sometimes helping if the salvagers let him. One of the men made him clean and polish the items they dug out: jewelry, figurines, bottles, jars, etc. It was a work to keep an eye on him, but it also allowed to him to taste everything he cleaned. Often he found human parts inside of these containers, bits of hair, skin, nail, that he would memorize the genetic patterns that he could then share, for example, with an Oloi like Nikanj, whenever he has the chance next time to maybe recreate those humans. Can you imagine? Like, you find a fossilized nail and, an Oankali just tastes it and is like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. And then just recreates the same human from, I don't know, like several centuries ago. Obviously not with the memories, but just...
I mean, not quite fossilized, right? Because otherwise it would have been completely replaced in some sense. But yeah, some preserved version of it. Which, I mean, like DNA is stable and all, but it's not completely stable, right? It degrades over time, so you're going to end up with fragmentary pieces of it. But and actually, this I suppose it might be similar to the. So there are currently projects to kind of try and do the whole like Jurassic Park type premise thing, right? Where you take some DNA from some preserved historical animal and you try and bring it back. I think there's a project that got reasonably well funded to try and do this with the mammoth.
Yes.
They're effectively going to have to use an elephant and some mammoth DNA. But what they end up having to do is kind of read the chunks of DNA that they can and use a related animal from now and like use that as kind of a scaffold to try and figure out what the genome would look like roughly. It's a tricky proposition, and you likely wouldn't get in a real sense like an actual representative member of the species. Plus, there's a whole bunch of stuff with are these variants that you're seeing actually just like damage, or is it actually a?
But the thing is, we found quite well preserved in ice mammoth bodies, right? So technically, I mean, if you have enough material, there should be and I know that you have to use elephants, but also for like rearing the mammoth, right? Because they have to have implant the embryo into the
we can't like artificially gestate them yet. We don't have the technology for that.
So
I mean, with enough tissue samples, you could probably put together a half decent assembly. But with like a few cells from a bottle or something, that would be pretty tricky to put the genome back together. But in the case of humans, right, it's not actually a different species; it's the same species. So what you're capturing is the individual level variation from the fragments and aligning them to a known scaffold genome. So it's a bit less difficult a problem.
Right. So one time, going back to the chapter, one time Sabina, a lady who conspired with Nessie about cutting off Amos and Shkak's tentacles, caught him tasting inside of a small bottle. She tried to get away from him, but luckily before she could tear Akin's tongue out, he managed to dodge her. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, as the good old saying says. Akin wanted her to go with Nessie's team, but she never did. He believed that it might be because of him, to keep an eye on him, basically. But she seemed to be more open than Nessie, more intelligent, as I think that Akin describes her, willing to learn, and Akin planned to use that to his advantage. Akin asked her about the bottle. It was a perfume. Basically, it's an old bottle of perfume. And as they were having conversation, Akin offered her an explanation on to why he needs to put things in his mouth. He explained to her that he needs to do it so that he can understand it. Basically, it's like for us seeing things, it's another sense for him that otherwise he would be like, as I think he described as being a cripple, and that he's too old to get poisoned.
Yeah, he compares it to having been like blindfolded and unable to like hear or smell or something.
Yeah,
and not like he'd go mad if he couldn't be allowed to use his the senses he had available to him. Is kind of how he puts it.
And as he said, he's too old to get poisoned because either the body would remove the poison or contain it in a flesh sack, as he calls it.
Yeah, this is an interesting point actually from last week where we talked about the alcohol thing. I think there was a similar kind of proposition there.
Yeah.
There's this kind of flesh sack thing, and we talked a little bit before about like the process by which I think it was Hajas was giving birth.
Yes,
where there's no birth canal per se in the Oankali. They just kind of make a hole. Yeah,
so it seems like they're able to control their tissue in really like almost a golem-like ability that you can really do whatever, mold it in any way possible. But like when you think about it, if you have a concentration like let's say of alcohol, let's say 70% alcohol, and you put it in the tissue sac, right? Because of the osmosis, like the water would seep in there.
Well, I suppose it depends what you've got in the lining, right? I mean, if you can construct like a relatively kind of tough lipid lining that will repel the contents well, then
it has to be very. Because I was thinking, like, if is it control of just like we have some cells in there, just wrap it around temporarily in those cells. But then, like if anything, there has to be homeostasis. So would it also be a problem? Like, I mean, like, or do you just are so in control that you can do anything with your body?
Like, assuming that you have this kind of extraordinary, like, morphological flexibility, it's almost like bud off a section of your stomach and just like, excrete that whole package, right?
Get rid of it. Like, yes.
Like, as I just I ate this thing, it's not agreeing with me, I'll just like pinch off this whole subsection of my stomach, grow back a new one, and then that can just like come out my side.
I didn't like that.
So I suppose the main thing might be you'd probably have to expel a bunch of other stuff with it, because sorting or like filtering out the stuff that you brought in from stuff that you already have would require a fairly complex like chemical process with something that's governed with membranes and differential access to different layers, right? You need something that can perform a filtration function, having an emergency eject button on the stomach that doesn't involve actually throwing up, but instead is just like, okay, we'll take a whole sack and just remove it. It's a bit of a weird way to do it, but okay.
So it is interesting, and we've been like hypothesizing about this, but it seems that like the Oankali have a way bigger control of their bodies than we are anticipating. So
yeah, it's interesting actually. The developmentally, that's a very interesting feature, right? Because in certainly in like mammalian development, we have a fairly fixed body plan, right? We grow a particular like pattern of structures in order, and some of the information necessary to kind of like recapitulate that structure is not even necessarily like retained in the adult structure. So for example, like salamanders and axolotls and things like that. If you cut off a limb, they kind of like they know where to regrow it from.
Yes.
Right. So the interesting part of it is that like the severed end of an arm like has to know where it is on the arm in order for the correct piece of the arm to grow back.
Yes.
If you see what I mean, right? So instead of if you cut off my arm, for example, like above the elbow, like the bit above the elbow needs to know that it was the bit above the elbow in order to regrow an elbow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's kind of like we know that there are like chemical cues that effectively encode that information about position in
there must be
like
chemical gradients, right, to indicate, like, for example, hand has this chemical gradient, cytokines, that basically you know.
And that's kind of like when we develop, that's how how the patterning is done. Right? Yes. You have a gradient of multiple chemical. So it can sometimes be just one, and it can be other factors as well. But you can also think of it as like gradients of intersecting chemicals, right? So if you have if you think about the arm again, it's not quite this analogy, but right, you have like up at the top, you'd have one end of the gradient where there's a high concentration of this chemical. The other end, you'd have a low concentration. So like near the shoulder, it's high, near the wrist, it's low. And then you'd position an elbow like in the right spot because like that's the midpoint of the gradient. Maybe you have another gradient going the other way that intersects and gives you it's middle concentration of this chemical and middle concentration of this chemical. That gives you the right spot. Right? It doesn't quite work that way for arms, but for structuring stuff in developmental biology, you have a very analogous pattern, right? So features get placed because they're at a particular chemical concentration. And the thing is, though, those gradients are not necessarily retained in the adult version of the organism. So they have to be there for the development to take place, but we don't necessarily have to keep them, right? Because we don't necessarily need that information once it's already in place, which makes we don't know to what degree that information is retained, and we don't know what all of the molecules are that represent all those things to some degree. Like there's still a lot of unknowns in developmental biology. People are working on these interesting questions and trying to figure out how the axolotls and stuff can regrow those limbs, because maybe there's some stuff in us that we can apply that to and learn how to make limbs regrow. I don't know, but maybe the information is just not retained in us developmentally. So for the Oankali to be that like morphologically flexible, they have to kind of they have to have like patterns for creating structures in their bodies that are not like fixed as a part of a developmental program,
and be able to manipulate them on hand. Yeah. I think it's if you remember a while back during like when we were doing PhDs, when I presented a paper on that little worm-like
the flatworm thing.
Yeah, the little flatworm, and basically when you cut its heads off, it can regrow the rest of its body. And basically it was related to epigenetics of some prime factors involved in activating the rest of the sort of repair or the developmental cues. So it could be something related that basically they have like a trigger that those things are suppressed, and then when the time comes, they just activate them and to guide the cytokines to develop the whatever they need to be developed, right?
Mm-hmm. You'd have to have some process effectively for having those kind of cascades under like nervous control, to be able to do it in a volitional way and in a sensible like time frame. So in the same way that say certain conditions in the environment will trigger an adrenaline rush, right?
Yes,
it's like a hormonal release. You can get an analogous process for something that will cause you to reshape some part of your body.
Yeah, but to be fair, if you imagine like being an Oankali, right, and if you wanted to do it in a simpler way or more, and there's like in a simpler way, I would say like look at those iguanas that spit like that shoot blood out of their eyes. Like you could just have the same, like somebody you've drunk alcohol and doesn't like shoot it out of your eye, and then you can
yeah. I mean, the one of the main problems with this whole process is that it's like in basically all organisms, that developmental type stuff is pretty slow.
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of cell replication that's got to take place to grow and reshape the tissue, and there are finite. There's only so fast you can do that, right? Because there's only so fast the DNA polymerase can move along the DNA to make new copies of the genome,
and that's the thing, right? Like
hard bottlenecks.
And that's the thing. Like the speed of the cells replicating and being able to basically in real time to surround your tissue, like there has to be multiple mechanisms involved. Like for example, imagine, like as you said, you drink alcohol and you isolate part of your stomach, right? So you have to have muscles that you can consciously contract to, for example, shut down that particular part of stomach. And then let's say, then if you can contract it, then you're closing the lumen so that the amount of cells that you have to replicate and close those gaps is not that much, right? And then, for example, let's say you can force the cells to undergo apoptosis to detach that part of stomach, and then So in a way, if you could think about it, you could probably develop something like this, but you'd have to have really pre-existing mechanism in the system to like really be able to do it in real time. If we are talking about like human bodies, right? Because
I think it would have to be. You'd have to rely less on cell replication because that really would be a relatively hard time bottleneck.
Yeah, it has to.
So you'd have to do more, like having tissues like de-differentiate and redifferentiate into different tissue types. Much more kind of plasticity there.
Yeah. So it has to be. I think there were more. It's more likely that they will have some pre-existing the body would have pre-existing systems in place in case things like this happen. If you're if you're a being that can control the genetics of your body, you could come up like, oh, okay, if that's the case, think about the future, like possible scenarios. You could technically engineer things. In it, of course, I'm talking about the level of understanding the Oankali have.
Actually, come to think of it, you could. So, if it's very easy for you to de-differentiate your cells and redifferentiate them into something else, and have that be like under quite fine control, then I'm just trying to think how that might fit in with the whole cancer interest.
Listen, I just had an idea. You could make yourself mini me. Of yourself, just basically, a little tiny clone, copy all the memories of that mini of yourself in the clone, because Oankali can, and then you just like send him on little missions, like go mini me, and then at the end you end up with Pokemon battles with little mini me's,
little mini August, yeah. Wow.
But yeah,
I just it kind of fits relatively well with their ability to prevent cancerous growths, because they have this kind of like fine control over the cell differentiation or something like that. But maybe that's also maybe they have a difficulty with
but the thing is
cell replication, but then
but the thing is
well,
Richard,
so,
as well, they were mentioning earlier about the how fascinating cancer for them was when they came to encounter humans the first time, because they had so much potential. So maybe the Oankali didn't have that, I don't know, maybe it's just lack of Octavia Butler's knowledge about the cell stem cells and stuff like that at the time, and she just magically their bodies were able to control their cells to modify, and the cancer was at the time like the big sort of, oh, maybe we can use it for our purposes, or because at the time, obviously cancer cells do have a lot of potential, but those cells are really bound to just replicate, they're just we just want to make more of our cells, and then that causes basically a death to the organism, where stem cells are different, right? They're the part of the system. And there's some places that they're like stop holders to stop them in going too crazy. So in a way, I think it's maybe at this point maybe a bit of lack of understanding in the author's knowledge about the whole system.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's there's a limit to the degree to which you're going to think through the detailed consistency of this. And we're kind of delving pretty.
But the cancer, in a way, can be really beneficial for the Oankali in a way, because you can make those little, as I say, mini me's. Because, like, I mean, you know, you have teratomas who can have like hair and teeth, and you know, when the cancer.
I mean, my kind of the thing that's a little bit inconsistent is the like the fact they already seem to have this ability, and the fact that they want an ability from cancer. So it's still a little mysterious what exactly it is that they're getting from the cancer to add to their repertoire. Because I think, for the most part, if they can do this stuff, then they probably already have whatever it is that cancer was likely to give them. Yeah. But there's enough ambiguity in the in the way that it's framed that I think it's you can get away with it.
Yeah. But yeah, let's maybe go back to the chapter. Where did we finish? Yes, about Akin putting, like, that he's too old to get poisoned, and that obviously he could either contain it or remove it. And Sabina told him that she understands, but she wasn't certain if she believes him. But it was for Akin, it was crucial for her to understand, especially because she was so very close on hurting Akin and so very close to getting stung. You know, that made Sabina to withdraw, saying that she forgot, and you know that he's still alien. And Akin says to her, this is a quote from the book, "Don't forget, but don't hate me either. I never stung anyone, and I don't ever want to." And the chapter ends with Akin asking her to help him learn, with the first question being, why do human babies put things in their mouths? That's a good question. Actually, I wanted to check it, and I forgot to check, why do babies psychologically stuff their things into their mouth? I think it's mostly because of growth teeth, right? Like, it's a lot of, like, when your teeth are growing and they're like biting on stuff, it's because, you know, like, it's itching and they're trying to
kind of itching.
Yeah.
And I suppose just
I mean,
similar to Akin's reasons, right? Curiosity and exploration.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, a lot of adults put a lot of other things in their mouth they shouldn't have, and yet we do it. So, and it's always curiosity. So I guess that explanation suffices everything.
Yep.
But yeah,
human babies are, completely useless at surviving on their own, right?
Oh,
so, it doesn't matter too much if they put things in their mouth because they have to be supervised or they'll just end up dead.
Pretty much. But yeah, let's go to my chapter 21 prediction, I guess.
Yeah.
So I thought that, like, they have nice, starting nice relationship. So we're gonna have more about Sabina and Akin. Like, there's gonna be another chapter about them. But no, it's very
really
brief chapter.
Very short.
So yeah, in fact, actually, Akin made all of the humans his teachers. He told Tate what he was trying to do, to which Tate told him that it's good, but eventually he will need to learn things about the Oankali too. And basically, the whole short chapter depicts a conversation between them about Akin worrying about the Oankali and the humans, and the fact there should be human Akjai. And Akin asks Tate if she would want that, to which Tate tells him that the place to live and to have children, they would do anything for that. But each time when Akin asks her if she would want to go, she dodged the question. And that's when the chapter ends, basically. It's just this little interaction between Akin and Tate on...
And I think we've seen a similar structure before when we've had kind of time jumps, right? A couple of short chapters that kind of give us a very brief slice of time from points in the time jump. And it kind of it like breaks up the
narrative,
breaks up the flow of the narrative, and it kind of gives you the sense of accelerated time because you have these little like short chunks, but there's a certain liminality to it, right? You have this change of frame, so it helps add to the perception of passage of time because you have 2 chapters, but actually they're just short little ones.
Yes. There have been several of those, like, just sort of it often happens when, like, the action's finished, like the whole, like, build up of the action. In this case it was like Nessie and her like trying to mutilate the girls, and then basically when this whole has been resolved, it's like sort of time passes. Same with like Lilith, like meeting with Paul Atreides. There was an action, there was some, and then there was the resolution, like some time has passed, and stuff like that. So,
although in this, I think we're getting a bit more kind of set up for some possible future tensions.
yes,
Although in the first book, we had that kind of blind time jump where a whole year passed by and we got nothing of it. And then we kind of got like teased in retrospect about what the contents of that year were from the way that Lilith was now interacting with the Oankali and so on. So it's a bit of a different approach. But
that's true. That's true,
so
because we had the 1 year of her training in the forest before being put in a prison with the rest of the humans to wake up the humans. And in the meantime, there was the observatory thing, right? They took her to that observatory deck so she could see the planet Earth from the ship.
Yes, yeah, but the kind of the relationship between her and Nikanj and the other Oankali was kind of much more developed off screen.
Yes.
Or off, not screen per se, but the equivalent thereof in a book form.
Well, I would say screen, yes, because in a way you imagine those when you read, your imagination creates the
mental stage. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so we have this kind of I suppose that the main thing from this is that Akin has trusted Tate with the knowledge that he wants to lobby the Oankali for a human Akjai.
Yes. To be honest, it's
which is an
first time to actually treat humans as an equivalent level of species. Obviously, evolutionary, probably we are not as far as the Oankali, obviously, but still treating us as on an equivalent sort of pedestal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the observation from Tate, I think, is interesting in that she doesn't seem to have much confidence that Akin will be able to persuade the rest of the Oankali to undertake this project. And
I mean, to be fair,
that actually bothers Akin.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of as I think mentioned earlier, Akin, and chapter 19 when they were talking about the Oankali, because of the genetic makeup of the humans, they don't really treat them intelligent enough in a way to be able to make this decision that would benefit the whole species. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just I think to a significant degree it's kind of a communications barrier, right? So they don't understand the way that the humans work, right? The nature of their intelligence is somewhat alien to them, so they treat them as lesser because they don't quite get it.
Yeah,
right. It's like when you're trying to communicate someone across a language barrier, you kind of have to revert to the basics, right? It's a similar kind of thing. So you can't get as full an appreciation for the intelligence of the other party you're dealing with because you've got a limited bandwidth channel of communication.
Absolutely. But yeah, I guess let's go to the final chapter of this episode, the chapter 22 prediction.
Yeah.
So now, I thought that Akin is gonna continue to study with him, but as the end of the part 2 of Phoenix is coming, so it is his time with them, and I thought maybe in this chapter some of the Oankali will appear, or maybe even Lilith herself, arriving to pick up her kid from Tate and Gabe and the rest of the humans.
Okay.
But yeah, it's still too early for that, it seems.
Yeah. We're not quite. Yeah. We still have it's one chapter left, right?
Yes.
I think in this section.
Yeah. But the thing is, the reason why I thought about it be happen now, because sometimes the 2 chapters, there's the in the last book, there was a build up in the second, the penultimate chapter, and then the last was just a resolution of the whole thing. So I also thought there's gonna be this, a build up, or the Oankali appear and there's oh shit, they're here for Akin, and then there's some action, there's some and then the next chapter, there's the final chapter, there's a resolution to this whole thing, and some sort of going to the back to the square one in a way,
makes narrative sense. Okay,
but yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
So chapter 22, the story starts and continues with Gabe taking Akin away from his cleaning job for a hike into the mountains. Akin, could see the volcano more clearly, as he describes a breathing place, a kind of joint where great segments of Earth's crust came together. And as they were hiking, Akin would collect some plants that he thought would taste best to Gabe and introduce them to the man. In return, Gabe would tell him about the past, about the place he grew up in, New York. He also told him about his acting career. Gabe asked if he ever had any made-up stories, for example, about the three bears. But Akin would tell him that his mom would only tell him the true stories, and also he didn't know what the bear is. That angered Gabe for a second, for a split second, but he caught himself because he sometimes forgets that, some things are already gone, and like the bear being already extinct.
Yeah, it's interesting there, the kind of response of anger to the fact that there are no longer bears. It's I think that might be a little bit. It's unclear if the responsibility for the absence of bears lies with the Oankali or the humans for the nuclear war. Right?
I mean, to be fair, if the planet was so nuked to the point that it took several centuries to recover, then I don't think.
Yeah, it's probably the humans.
I'm pretty sure I'm betting my money on the humans.
I'm wondering if Gabe is directing that anger towards the humans or the Oankali.
Yeah, though this is another type of question, and I feel like it's more of a. At this point, it's like we've just talked about this before. It's probably like trying to put the blame on someone else, like on the foreign or the other ones, as I think you said.
Yeah, that's like the blaming immigrants thing. It's the usual pattern, right?
Yeah. So, but yes. So that the same night, Gabe gave Akin a show. He became an old man. Akin has never seen an old person because most of them were kept on the ship to protect them and keep them healthy. Gabe acted as an old man, a man whose daughters betrayed him. That particular play he was doing was The King Lear by William Shakespeare. And sometimes the character would be sane, sometimes not, and that terrified Akin. He wanted to get up and run into the darkness, but at the same time he sat still, spellbound, unable to move or break his attention from Gabe. He couldn't understand much of what Gabe said. Well, it was in Old English, I assume, but he could feel the emotions portrayed by Gabe.
But it's not technically Old English, right? I think Elizabethan era English is still technically... I mean,
to be fair, like when
Middle English.
when I came to UK and started learning properly English, and when I had to read Shakespeare, I was like, "What is this bloody magic in front of me?"
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's not actual. Like there's a specific linguistic definition of Old English that's like much more Germanic before the French stuff comes in. It's even harder to read than Shakespeare. Like it is old in a non-technical sense, but it is not like Old English in the in the technical sense of Old English.
Pre-modern English. To be fair, I also understand why he wouldn't understand it, because Shakespeare loved to create his own words. So a lot of words probably were not known to Akin.
I mean, there's that kind of Shakespeare invented words thing, but it's not so much that he invented them. It's the first place they were recorded in text, right? They were in common usage in speech. Otherwise, like, it wouldn't really have worked, right? If you just made up a bunch of words, no one would have understood what you were saying.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's why you can tell that Richard hates Shakespeare. So yes, going back. So Akin couldn't understand, but he could understand the emotions portrayed by Gabe. Surprise, anger, betrayal, utter bewilderment, despair, madness. Once it's finished, Gabe laughed to himself, from the fact that he performed Lear to the 3-year-old kid and the fact that he could remember it all. I can ask him if he ever did this to people of Phoenix, but Gabe told him no, and not to ask why, because he doesn't know himself. Like, there are other responsibilities that he needs to do, scavenging, farming, and all of that. Akin liked the acting. He scared him at first, but he couldn't understand him. But for him, it was like the Oankali communication, sharing feelings and emotions.
Now this is I think this is an interesting point, right? Because we discussed it before when Akin was kind of like struggling to understand one of the why people told stories. So he was calling them lies, and he couldn't quite get it. But he now seems to have got a handle on why humans tell stories, on the functions of stories in human culture. They have this function that is analogous to what the Oankali can achieve by their like higher bandwidth communication person to person of things like emotion and sensation that humans can't do directly, but have to do kind of through
metaphors and kind of
the inspiring empathy in a character who's portraying that sensation. Right?
Basically, Akin is gonna become Paul Atreides from the Dune. in the protagonist, in the sense of the like being the leader of the like, he starts to understand things that were missing between the humans and Oankali, and then he's gonna lead them to become the leader of the constructs and the Oankali and human connection. I'm telling you now. This is my long-term prediction.
The resistor messiah.
Basically, there we go.
Kwisatz Haderach.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Although hopefully they won't do the death squadrons and stuff.
Yes, we'll see. Who knows? Yes.
No Fadaikin. Thank you very much.
To be fair, I mean, it's pretty close to the Dune, considering the fact that, I mean, the ship is basically a massive worm that eats everything, so...
I get
but it doesn't produce the spice.
Kind of. Yeah, and also the Bene Gesserit haven't been, like, seeding the fact that there will be a messiah of like half Oankali, half
I mean, you say that
descent.
But in a way I would say Kaguya is the messiah, because he was like, to Lilith, you will not understand us, but your children will. I mean, that is exactly, it's just like basically his...
there is something over it. I can see the parallels. Yep. And they Paul's also, he's like half Mentat, half Bene Gesserit, isn't he? Bringing together the male and the female capabilities.
Basically, he has everything, like all the possible, good things that, powerful things that, Paul is just kind of, and in a way, Akin also, like, part of human, part of Oankali.
Mm-hmm.
I think, although I say that, but I feel like the true Messiah would be like the human Oankali Uloi. Because only an Uloi can control the body and the genetics and stuff like that. So I think that would be the true, like the final level, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we've
break with the tradition of male messiahs there right now.
It's time for Uloi Messiah.
Got to have a male messiah. Can't have any non-male messiahs. That would be
that would be bad. That's not good.
Not patriarchal.
Exactly.
Enough, right?
That's not good enough. Nobody would want to read that, and nobody should. Please don't cut that away. Don't cut. I'm joking. Right. So going back to the chapter, the pair then lied down the cleared area of some shack they found, and for sleep. And Akin asked what was this place, to which Gabe told him maybe it was some peasant's house or maybe some old Incan dwelling. Oh, so this basically confirms that they are in South America. He then told him that who the Incas were and existing before the Europeans came. He described that this area was always associated with them because that they were the native population. It's interesting because Akin says, there's not really, says to Gabe, like, there's not much really difference between you and Tate. But Gabe is like, actually we are Europeans, and whereas the other ones, they're like, a bit different. Natively, to the different region of the planet. The chapter then continues into the few days where Akin and Gabe were continuing exploring and finding other ruined dwellings. He never asked Gabe why was he taken on a long trip, and Gabe never really explained. Akin insisted on walking most of the time, which made Gabe happy, not have to carry to him, and managed to keep up. Gabe would willingly eat the plants that Akin gave him, liked some of them enough to take them back from planting, and asking Akin what he could take back to grow was the most pleasing thing that he could do. That's what Oankali did, collect life, and that's what it felt doing. Akin would teach Gabe what he must do to keep them alive based on their genetic patterns, while keeping the genetic memory and some cells of each plant for himself to share with the Ooloi. Which is interesting, right? Because we've discussed this before about like what's the best, diet and stuff like that. So Akin basically could tell the same with the plant. Like, what do they need the most? But amino acids is one thing, but also they need a lot of like ions, like phosphate ions and stuff like that. So
and even potentially other stuff from their ecology, right? They might need other species from their environment to be growing with them to meet the at least if they want to get naturally pollinated or other stuff like that. Certain soil bacteria sometimes are needed, all kinds of stuff.
Yes, there's some plants that they need the fungus on the roots to be able to digest, right? Whatever the fungus secretes is what really fertilizes the plant.
Yeah, lots of kind of mutually interdependent relationships there. I mean, we talked before about the Brazil tree. And all
I was waiting.
I was
waiting for you to mention that. I was just like, when is it going to be mentioned?
Yeah, but like the same principle that applies there applies to many other things. No, but I suppose it depends on Akin's ability to perceive those needs, and also the possibility of artificially providing for some of those, right? So, I mean, to use the canonical Brazil tree example, right? You don't necessarily need the agouti to crack open the seed pod if you can do it with a hammer as a human, if you want to cultivate the trees.
Yes. But yeah, the chapter ends with Gabe remarking that Akin was the happiest he has ever seen him so far. But Akin only smiled. Gabe did not reciprocate the smile, but Akin could tell that he made obvious effort not to. When they finally reached the camp a few days later, Gabe made except for a book, Gabe met Tate with none of the odd anxiety showed when she had been out of the sight for a while. And that's where the chapter ends.
Yeah, it's an interesting little note on the end there. That's the Gabe's kind of reaction to meeting Tate. I'm not quite sure how to interpret that.
I guess maybe he never showed the same thing, because Tate was doing the same thing as Lilith, the whole frustration with life. And maybe Gabe never did that. And so maybe for them, it was more of this whole... In a way, maybe Gabe has just accepted their fate, in a way, right? Whereas Lilith and Tate were just frustrated that they, with the whole idea. Although that also doesn't sound correct, right?
I mean, it feels like it's something to do with their relationship dynamic. I'm not sure what exactly, but the kind of him being anxious when she's out of his sight, that seems, I don't know, some possessive component or something like that. I'm not sure. Yeah, but
it could be, but I don't know. It also feels like a worry, right? Like you worry about someone, and maybe it was planned, right? That they have to take, they need to take Akin maybe away from in case Oankali appear or something. Maybe it was just something pre-planned, and Tate was like, yeah, it's fine, type of thing. Whereas when Tate was leaving, it wasn't really planned. She would just stand up, leave for a few days, and come back. You know what I mean? Like Lilith did.
Maybe, yeah. It feels as though this experience, whatever it was that Gabe just had, was I don't know, relaxing, right?
Yeah.
It's relieved some tension for him, so he's less nervous than.
So, who knows? It's a bit ambiguous to know. But yeah, I guess let's go to my chapter 23 prediction. So this is the last part of the last chapter of the book, of the part 2. So it must be the Oankali arriving. I can't think you end up the chapter and suddenly there's no Oankali. Has to be.
Okay. Yeah. So you think you were just a chapter early
Yeah,
with your
maybe
previous
I was
prediction.
chapter early, but I'm pretty. I don't know. Like, if the Oankali don't appear now, I'm like, okay, Akin has been religiously abandoned.
Okay. So do you have, apart from the Oankali appearing, do you have any inkling about how you think
Oh
the
boy.
resistors will react?
I mean, they have two guns. I don't know. Like, it's the Oankali could either just appear out of nowhere without like the humans even realizing and just snatching Akin away, or it'd be like, oh, hi guys, we come in peace. We give you a choice. You can either come. We are gonna take the kid anyway, but you can come with us to have your own kids, or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's. I don't know, the two guns and Gabe and Tate getting so emotionally attached to Akin. There's bound to something drama, and oh my god, oh my dear god, if Lilith appears, there's definitely gonna be some bloodshed. Like, that woman is just a Terminator in a human skin. She's gonna like tear through all of them.
She's always very measured and controlled, though, right? She's
Yes.
She never really. She never gets into a fight that she can't. That she doesn't think she's gonna.
Well,
win,
I mean, yes, but I can sort of imagine her
She's...
like going up to the guy holding the gun and doing Hagrid in the Harry Potter thing, just bending the rifle upwards.
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
Just be like, try to shoot with this now, bitch.
No, okay, interesting. No. But yeah, I could certainly see the presence of Lilith being a potentially aggravating factor for the.
So I'm not certain, but
resistors.
it could be. There's definitely gonna be a tension, obviously, because this lonely kid that looks like human, and but yeah, it's the Oankali, right?
And what do you think about? What Akin will want to do here, right? Because he now has his project of studying humans. Do you think he'll feel he's got enough information, at least to go back and communicate with the Oankali?
So I don't know. Good question. I have no clue, because you see, obviously he's learning quite a lot, and that little encounter with Gabe when he acted to him was like, probably more, if Akin is smart enough, he was like, actually, this was probably the most valuable experience he could have had with the humans. And of course he learned a lot about the humans, but the whole culture and the whole idea of how humans function and their necessity. Obviously the most important part about the human Agi is there, but to fully understand humans, the time, I mean, he spent a year. A year is quite a long time, especially, when you spend time and you listen to people. So maybe he has collected enough information, but, it's like the question, of science, is it enough? It's never enough. You can always ask more questions and learn more. So not sure. In here, maybe enough, maybe just enough to be able to persuade few of them, and then create sort of like a break, like a breakaway faction from the Oankali, saying, there should be human Agi, and then suddenly, as I said, Akin becoming the new Paul Atreides, leading the resistance.
So this is an interesting point. So do you think the Oankali will be receptive to the idea of a human Agi? And because we've never really seen any significant internal strife.
That's the thing.
With them. Is that do you think this is a source of disagreement?
That's the thing. Because we've never seen, we know that the Oankali came with an overall general conclusion that about the trade or whatever in the first book, right? That they they have sort of gathering where they all communicate in a way and make decision, right? But we don't really we're never told exactly how it works, and we're never told how it looked like. So I don't know, but it feels like maybe there are some Oankali, especially those, for example, that like Nikanj, that were grown with humans from they were with Lilith, and from the almost when they were young, and they've learned from maybe there are some more willing to, how do you call it, to be on the side of the humans, right? That like they need that.
Yeah. So enough Oankali have had close relationships with humans that the kind of deeper insights that Akin can provide will be like useful and interesting to them. So they may be on his side.
Like in a way, I mean, you would, if you think about it, right? You could literally, with the genetic engineering, like, eugenics is a thing, right? You could, like, with Don Kali's abilities, like, you could really, if you don't like something in the humans, right, you could make them maybe less aggressive. Don't know. Too difficult topic to discuss, and I have not enough knowledge about to even begin hypothesizing how would you do it.
Yeah, it's a complex polygenic trait for those sorts of things, right? They're difficult to engineer.
So I don't know, like, but if Don Kali would want to go the eugenics pathway, I don't know if it's gonna work that well, but I don't know. Like, Don Kali have time. I mean, they live for flicking forever, so you could try several different, like, islands of humans, just Akjai, and just try different things. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose not technically Akjai if they're like this. They'd still be.
I mean, pure humans, basically.
Some version of Dinso.
But in a way, in terms of the book, I would say calling them human Akjai hits fits it here. I would say.
Yeah, I suppose like if there's a subgroup that's being subject to genetic engineering by the Oankali, they're still not quite. They're not Akjai in the same way that the Oankali Akjai are Akjai.
Yes, that's correct.
They're still kind of a version of Dinso because they're some select subset of the population according to the pressure applied by the
honestly I don't know
Oankali.
what could they do, but we'll see. I mean, the book is still going, so who knows what's gonna happen. It might be the next part of the book, it's gonna be like, I don't know, years later, or maybe like Akin goes onto the ship, and because that's the name of the ship, right? Like the part 3 is the actual name of the ship, right?
I think so. Yeah, the ship is called Chatper,
so
right? That's,
maybe Akin will see Tino, and then a few years pass, and Akin's or maybe he's just trying to persuade the Oankali or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No. Nice. One more little content recommendation on the difficulty of engineering polygenic traits, or the nature of polygenic traits, and why that might be a tricky thing to engineer, I think would be. So there's a book called The Genetic Lottery by Catherine Page Harden, which came out pretty recently. It talks a lot about the kind of genome-wide association studies, polygenic traits, and their predictive value for fairly complex phenotypes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will definitely check it out as well. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I guess that's it for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Klinka.
I was Richard Acton.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.